What a feast! Incredible game for Duke here on Thanksgiving as the Blue Devils knock off the Arkansas Razorbacks. Duke 8-0 on the season. And Cameron Boozer, once again, thank you, Cam. Happy Thanksgiving as he carries the Blue Devils to a victory.
Hi, everybody. Dick Vitale. Hey, make sure you listen, man, to Locked On Blue Devils with J.J. Jackson. He's awesome, baby.
You are Locked On Blue Devils, your daily podcast on the Duke Blue Devils. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everybody. Welcome into another episode of the Locked On Blue Devils podcast. My name is JJ Jackson. So great to have you here with us today. Our reaction show to the Duke basketball win Thanksgiving night over Arkansas as the Blue Devils down the Razorbacks 80-71. Duke now 8-0 on the season and led in this game by an amazing performance from Cameron Boozer. We'll talk about it all with our pal Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham. He's also got the Believe in Duke Football podcast. Excited to break down everything that took place on this Thanksgiving night in Chicago. Happy Thanksgiving to all of our everydayers out there within the world of Locked On Blue Devils. If you haven't done so already, please be sure to follow and subscribe to us for free wherever it is that you get your podcast. Be sure to leave us a 5-star rating and written review. You can watch our show each and every day on YouTube as well. Like this video, share it with your friends. Your support means so much to us. What a game this was here for Duke over Arkansas. They had as large of a lead as 13 points late in the first half. Arkansas scored the final 7 points of the first half to make it a 6-point margin there at the end at halftime. And then Arkansas came out, and for a large portion of the second half, they were actually in control. And Arkansas got up to as many as 7 in that second half. But Cameron Boozer, Caleb Foster down the stretch, those guys really carried the load and made it happen for the Duke basketball team, who earned an incredibly impressive win. So, without further ado, we know him, we love him. It's our good pal, Kevin Connelly, that's hanging out with us on the show as we welcome Kev into the program. Happy Thanksgiving to you, my friend, and what an exciting win it was for Duke.
Happy Thanksgiving, JJ. Happy Thanksgiving to all the listeners and viewers out there. And certainly it was a very happy Thanksgiving if you're a fan of the Duke men's basketball team.
Yeah, we've been treated to a lot of good games this week and Feast Week with what's taking place in Maui and the battle for Atlantis. And you were there in Las Vegas at the Players Era Festival. And here Duke has a unique opportunity playing on Thanksgiving. Had a really good conversation on yesterday's show with Jeff Fedotin from Forbes, who was giving us kind of the business insider look at this game in particular. It's only the 4th college basketball game in the last 15 years to be played on a major television network, not over cable. So the fact that Duke had Chiefs Cowboys leading them into the action on CBS, tons of people were able to watch this game play out. And back and forth it kind of went. I mentioned Duke's big lead in the first half. They cut it to 6 at halftime. And then finally, late in the game, it was Duke able to make enough winning plays down the stretch. Fortunately, they featured Cameron Boozer a whole lot.
Yeah, they did. And it's been the Cameron Boozer we've really come to know over this first month of the season. Even if you want to go back to those exhibition games against UCF and Tennessee, right? This is the type of performance that we've seen from him. And it's carried over. I think some people have I'm not gonna say wrongly criticized, but there is that question, oh, can he finish over bigger, taller, more athletic centers? Like you saw some struggles against Flory Badunga of Kansas. But in this game, it was all Cam Boozer. You mentioned the 35 points, 9 rebounds. He scored from all 3 levels. It was as good of a performance from Cameron Boozer as you're going to see. And it came in a game where Duke desperately needed it, especially in that second half when they were struggling. And you look at even the first half to an extent where I think Duke was a little bit surprised and overwhelmed with the length and athleticism that this Arkansas team has on its roster.
Yeah.
And, JJ, I kind of understand that because there's a lot of the same players on Arkansas from a season ago. And I was able to see the Razorbacks in person last year, and they are a big and physically imposing team with their athleticism, and Trayvon Brazil and Knox and Billy Richmond and DJ Wagner and a couple of those other guys who remain on the team from a season ago. And it did look like Duke was a little bit overwhelmed with that in the opening 5 to 10 minutes of this game because, yes, they played high major teams like Texas and Kansas, but they don't have the size that Arkansas does. And it took Duke a little while to really settle in and figure out how to work against Arkansas size and defense.
Completely agree. I mean, the physicality of the Razorbacks certainly jumped out to a lot of people that were watching this game as it played out, and Duke found a way to hang tough. They featured Cameron Boozer a whole lot on the interior. Patrick Ngongba II was able to get going for Duke throughout this game, and really impressed with the toughness that Duke displayed. Nick Khamenia played a whole lot in place of Dame Sarr in a game like this, and I thought he did a really good job being super active, really early on in the game when Duke just needed something to energize and get them going. I thought it was Nick Khamenia who kind of provided that spark.
Yeah, 100%, JJ. I've been telling you this for Nick Khamenia since the preseason. You're going to watch him play, and you're going to look at the stat sheet, and you're going to be like, oh, he didn't really have that great of a game. And you look at 4 points, 1 of 4 shooting, missed 2 3-pointers, and you're like, oh, man, well, what did he really do? Well, I thought the 5 rebounds were huge, especially a couple of those rebounds that he got late in the second half. He got an offensive rebound when they were down 3. He got the big defensive rebound with about 2 minutes to go, and Duke holding a 4-point lead. And Khamenia played the final 9.5 minutes of this game, JJ. And one note I'll give you statistic-wise, Nick Khamenia plays 28 minutes. His plus-minus rating, plus 18. That's the best on the Blue Devils on this night.
Yeah, I mean, we could look into the plus minus here in just a moment, and then just kind of the roster or rotation, I should say, that Duke kind of went with here, because for the last 10 minutes of that second half, there just weren't changes. I mean, the 5 that really got it going for Duke are who stood out there. And one of the guys who wasn't necessarily making shots in the second half, but was in the first, is Isaiah Evans. Duke got some big-time 3-pointers from him, because let's give credit. The Blue Devils did build a 13-point lead there in the first half before Arkansas made the run to cut it down to 6. Part of the reason why Cameron Boozer got into a rhythm, and also he was able to play off Isaiah Evans, who started to make tons of shots from the outside.
Yeah, and some of those 3-pointers were big in the first half. Like his first 3-pointer tied the game at 12. His next 3-pointer tied it at 17. And then that third and what ultimately was the final 3-pointer he made in this game gave Duke a 3-point lead. And you saw a couple of them coming off of offensive rebounds. He missed a 3, got it right back, set his feet, and fired. And we've talked about how Isaiah Evans kind of loves these big moments in these NBA arenas, and he's not afraid of the moment. However, I think Duke is looking maybe for a little bit more consistency out of him. And don't get me wrong, he's been really good so far this season. But I think still, even with this win, the big question is, who can you rely on for secondary scoring behind Cameron Boozer? And I think for most of the season, and just in general, people's answer was going to be Isaiah Evans. And Evans didn't really have it in the second half. He only took 2 shots and didn't score, but you saw Caleb Foster be that veteran leader for Duke. You saw Pat Ngongba really shine late in the game, and Duke was thankful, pun on words, that those two were able to have those big-time performances, because it allowed them to get this 9-point win.
Yeah, it was the only 9 points that Isaiah Evans made in the game or in that first half, where he was able to knock down those 3 threes from the outside. So really impressed with what he was able to do there offensively for Duke. Only attempted 1 2-point shot the entire night, and he was blocked by the rim on a dunk attempt. So got to get that figured out. After Slim had 3 dunks his last time out against Howard, we'll see how he can make more athletic plays down the stretch for the Blue Devils. All right, let's dive a little bit further into this box score and talk again. Duke really impressive in their victory today over Arkansas. Locked On Blue Devils continues in a moment. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at Omaha Steaks. The holidays always feel a little easier when you already know the perfect gift, and Omaha Steaks makes it almost too simple. Whether you're treating yourself this season or sending something memorable to family and friends, Omaha Steaks delivers handcrafted perfection right to their door. And this week is the best time to jump in, because their cyber sale is here and the deals are huge. I've given Omaha Steaks as a gift before, and the reaction from my loved ones is always the same. Total excitement when the box arrives, and even bigger smiles when everything finally hits the grill. So save big on unforgettable gifts with Omaha Steaks. Visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide and an extra 20% off select favorites during their cyber sale. And for an additional $35 off, use promo code COLLEGE at checkout. That's omahasteaks.com, promo code COLLEGE, COLLEGE. Terms apply. See site for details. Omaha Steaks is a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, Kevin Connelly's hanging out with us here on the show today, talking about this Duke basketball win that they just had over the Arkansas Razorbacks. And want to get into this box score a little bit with you, Kevin. Once again, Cameron Boozer, 35 points, 13 of 18 shooting, 2 of 4 from three-point range, finished with 9 rebounds, 3 assists, 1 block, 1 steal. In 29 minutes, he had to play, 36 minutes for Cam Boozer. He was +7 in the plus-minus department. One of the only critiques you could have for him, he finished 7 for 11 from the free throw line. Got to make those free throws, Duke, as the Blue Devils finished just 14 of 21. So only making 2/3 out of our free throws tonight against Arkansas. But boy, they just, I'm sorry. There was a lot of size and physicality with Arkansas, but unfortunately for them, Kevin, they had no answer whatsoever for Cam.
Yeah, they really didn't. And again, it should have, and I hopefully did dismiss some of those questions and critiques that people had about Cameron Boozer. How is he going to be able to finish against taller and more athletic players? Because him listed at 6'9", going up against guys that are 6'10" and 7 foot. And Arkansas has some of those guys, and he was fully able to dismiss those questions, at least for this night. JJ, I want to go back to the first half, though, because I thought what he did once Duke settled into the game, really got the team rolling. You saw him hit those 2 3-pointers in the first half, which I thought were huge, and it allowed Duke to
he was scoreless. He was scoreless in the first 10 minutes. Is kind of what you're going at here.
Exactly, and then he's able to get a couple of 3-pointers to go, and then you saw the steal. The assist, I think he ended up giving it up when he got that steal. I can't remember who was on the other side of the dunk, but it was just, he set the tone. He was like, all right, fellas, hop on my back. I got us here. And he carried them into the first half and put them up 41-28 late in that first half. And that was such a huge moment in the game because Arkansas came out with everything they had early in the second half before Cam started really getting going late in the game. And JJ, one thing just want to add to you going down the list of his stats, made his final 5 shots of this game. And Duke obviously needed all of those, and not including some of the free throws that he made. But his last 5 shots from the field were all good.
Incredible win for Duke by 9. Cam Boozer, you are the man. Thanks for what you do for Duke basketball this season, man. It's super fun. We are thankful on this Thanksgiving that Cam Boozer plays for us and is wearing the right shade of blue. How about Caleb Foster? I thought this was one of the best games by far that we have ever seen from Caleb Foster. Career high 8 assists for CFOS in the action to go along with 5 rebounds. Finished with 15 points, 5 of 10 from the floor, 2 of 3 from three-point range, including a killer relocation three-pointer with about 2.5 minutes left after Arkansas had made a 3 to cut it to 1. Big-time shot there from Caleb. Yes, he had 4 turnovers, still trying to, calm that number down a little bit. But everybody, myself included, has been critical of Caleb Foster. We must give this man his flowers. Got to play fair, go both ways here. Caleb Foster was great tonight.
Yeah, you're 100% right, JJ. You got to go both ways. I think he's been good for a lot of this season too, JJ. Against Texas, against Kansas, tonight here against Arkansas, and some of these big games that Duke has been in. I think he's been good, but obviously tonight was one of his best performances in a Duke uniform. And JJ, I'll start first with that 3-pointer. Biggest shot of the game, right?
Yeah.
I mean, and the fact that it came at such a critical point. 2.5 minutes to go. Arkansas just hit a 3, as you said, to cut it down to 1. I mean, that was such a big shot in the game and something that Duke desperately needed at the time. He goes 2 of 2 from three-point range in the second half. And, we'll get into the turnovers in just a second, but it was that initial turnover with Duke up 4, and Pat Ngongba is wide open inside, and it was almost like a quarterback not getting enough on a pass and it gets intercepted, right? We've
Yeah.
all seen that where a quarterback just doesn't have any power behind one of his passes and it gets picked off. That was kind of like it was for Caleb Foster, where he was just trying to push the ball down to Pat Ngongba instead of firing a pass in there. It got intercepted, and down came Arkansas for an easy 2 points, which then cut the 4-point lead down to 2. And then for him to have the ability to come back and hit that 3 about a minute and a half later, that was such a huge play.
Yeah, that was the most critical turnover. I think that obviously, who knows if that gets to 6. Maybe that's where Arkansas calls a timeout. Duke's feeling really great, and it doesn't stay as close down the stretch there if Duke's able to get that big momentum play, that big dunk from Ngongba. I'm with you, though. I like kind of the analogy that you made there. Is this a check down, Kevin? Are we dumping it off to the tight end here? Because I'm with you. It was such a soft pass. Looked like the linebacker, to keep this football analogy going, came across the middle and was able to get a steal and interception, if we're doing football things here, and head off the other way for a bucket.
Yeah, it was like you had the receiver crossing over the middle, and you're just trying to float it out there to him, and a linebacker is sitting right in coverage, and he just jumps right in front of the pass and picks it off. That's what it kind of felt like. And then the other one, the game was probably out of reach at this point, but he brings the ball across half court. Cameron Boozer standing right next to him. You got 2 defenders in the same spot, and he tries to flip a pass over the defender to Boozer, and it gets picked off. That was with under a minute left, and Duke already up 8. So again, you think the game is over.
Yeah.
At that point, Arkansas came down, made it a 6-point game, and then Duke was able to kind of ice the game at the free throw line behind Cam Boozer, or even behind Caleb Foster.
Caleb, yeah.
But
he came back and made those free throws.
Yeah, but that was the other turnover where it's like, okay, if that was a 5-point game, you cannot try to make that pass. You got to spin out of that. You got to call a timeout. You got to do something besides make that pass. So those are the 2 turnovers in the final 4 minutes that it just can't happen in close games.
I mean, Caleb Foster was the guy Duke went with here. I mentioned 36 minutes on the floor for Cameron Boozer. Foster played the second most at 33. There was a major minutes discrepancy tonight at the guard spot. This is the most lopsided it's been the entire season, as Foster played 33. Caden Boozer only played 8 minutes against Arkansas tonight, folks. And in those 8 minutes, he was a -8. So, the plus-minus swing, +14 in favor of Caleb Foster, -8 in favor of Caden Boozer. Again, we understand that it's going to be back and forth throughout the course of the season, but it is significant, Kevin. This was the most lopsided it's been, and individually, I think this is the best individual performance of either of them that we've really seen so far this year.
Well, 100%. And in a game like this, you needed guys who were going to be tough enough to play. And for Caleb Foster, not only was he tough enough, but he has the experience as well. I think in that first half, Caden Boozer was one of the players that was a little bit overwhelmed with the size and the physicality of Arkansas. The early turnover after he checked in, he had a missed layup. Then he came out and really didn't come back in until the final minute and a half of the first half, and kind of the same thing in the second half. He was in for about 4 or 5 minutes, but didn't record any type of stats, and then sat for the rest of the game. So a learning experience for a guy like Caden Boozer. I think it was also a learning experience for a guy like Darren Harris. The matchup didn't necessarily lean in their favor of guys that you want on the floor, but certainly I think those guys will be major factors for Duke going forward. I think the one conversation we can have about guys who necessarily didn't play well and haven't necessarily played well against some of these really good teams is Dame Sarr, who struggled again tonight.
Sure, I'll go there. 4 points for Dame Sarr, 2 of 6 shooting from the floor, 2 rebounds, had just 1 turnover, 2 fouls, and a steal. He did have the one big dunk on the breakout from Cam Boozer. It was nice to see Sarr playing above the rim and throwing it down the way that he did, but was 0 for 3 from 3-point range. 17 minutes of action. He was -2 in the plus-minus department for Sarr.
Yeah, I mean, and you look at the game against Kansas just last week, and that was Caden Boozer finishing the game instead of him. We know that he didn't play that great against Texas either. Now, I mean, I'm the one that has said it's going to take time for him to develop and get used to things. But I think, yes, you are going to be patient and you want him to progress along. But I think you thought that production might have been better at a time like this, especially with his ability to shoot the three-point ball, at least what we've been told how he can shoot the three-point ball coming over from FC Barcelona. That necessarily hasn't been there against some of these good teams.
All right, so Duke wins by 9. It's a great Thanksgiving to be in the win column. We'll talk a few more notes about this game in particular after we take our final break here on today's episode of Locked On Blue Devils. Locked On Blue Devils here today is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Hey guys, the NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you miss the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into a same-game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game super exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Also got NFL action on FanDuel. Of course, we've got the Black Friday game tomorrow. Chicago Bears at the Philadelphia Eagles. FanDuel right now has Philadelphia favored by 7. Also over-under for this one set at 43.5. Go get started on that action right now as FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Head to FanDuel.com and to sign up, play your game. FanDuel is the official sports betting partner of the NBA and a proud sponsor of Locked On Blue Devils. All right, last few moments on the show today. I've got Kevin Connelly from Ball Durham here. We're talking about Duke basketball and their impressive win over Arkansas. The Blue Devils and will now get set for Florida in the ACC-SEC Challenge from inside Cameron Indoor. And the next weekend, Duke plays a true road game at Michigan State. That's going to be a big test. Before we get there, though, I want to keep talking a little bit about this rotation that we saw at the very end. Last 10 minutes of the game, it's the same 5 guys out there in winning time for Duke to get the job done, with Caleb Foster and Isaiah Evans making up your backcourt, Nick Khamenia, and then for Duke along with Patrick Ngongba and Cameron Boozer on the interior. Big thing here, Pat Ngongba for the first time this season stayed out of foul trouble and was able to be impactful down the stretch against the size of this Arkansas team. And then as we've kind of mentioned here, it was Foster more in a rhythm than Boozer, and Khamenia much better than Dame Sarr.
Yeah, I think I'll start first with Pat Ngongba. I guess it was kind of funny. It's funny because it worked out. The missed three-pointer in the corner that goes off the side of the backboard, the offensive rebound, goes back up, misses it, gets it right back, puts it back in, and that puts Duke up 2 with 5.5 to go. And that's
by far the worst shot of the game. I mean, he started the game off for Duke making a three-pointer, and then, by far the worst shot of the night from Duke was that Ngongba corner 3.
It had a happy ending, but I have to agree.
You know, he's made 2 now from the outside, Kevin. And if I think about both of them have been from the top of the key or just a little bit off.
Yeah.
So Ngongba's still working a little bit on the range from the corner, it appears, because man, that was way off.
But sometimes those corner threes are a little bit easier because they're a little closer, but this one wasn't.
No.
But, you come down with a couple of big rebounds late in this game, the big block that he had around the final minute. I think this was a major positive step in the right direction for Pat Ngongba, but especially the way he played in the second half because he didn't have that good of a first half. Rotation-wise, I'm curious to see if they tinker with the starting lineup and put Sarr on the bench for a guy like Khamenia, because Khamenia just plays so hard all the time. And like I said, he does the little things that don't show up necessarily in the box score. But would you want a player like that coming off the bench? I think that's also a conversation people might want to have, because that could be a good spark. If someone in the starting 5 doesn't have it, you put Khamenia in and kind of lights that fire under everybody. So as you talk through it, as you think through it, more likely than not, I don't think they change the starting lineup. I think it's really interesting to talk about these next two games because Florida not as good right now as anybody would have thought. They had that season opening loss against Arizona, and then they lose today to not a good TCU team in a game that they really blew in the second half. Now I know they get Providence, who out of the Big East is not a good team. They'll get them tomorrow before they come to Duke. So I think that game is, I don't want to say it's easy, but it's much more gettable. Not that I thought Duke was going to be an underdog in that game anyway, but like Duke could be looking, I mean, they were a 10-point favorite in this game. They could be very much looking at being a 10-point favorite at home against a Florida team that has not lived up to expectations so far. And then I don't know how many people thought Michigan State was going to be the toughest game of the non-conference schedule, and it very well might be their toughest game. But how good has Michigan State looked so far this season with wins over Arkansas, Kentucky, and then just a dominant end of the first half, second half against North Carolina earlier today down in Florida. So this is a Michigan State team. I mean, I know their ranking right now is 11, but it's hard to argue they're not playing like a top 5 team. There's a lot of teams, JJ, in the country right now that are worthy, I think, of a top 5 ranking. You look at Purdue. I think you have to look at Michigan after what they did in the Players Era Festival. You have to include Arizona, in my opinion, in that conversation. Duke is certainly in the mix. And I might be forgetting a team, but Michigan State has to be in there as well. And that's not even really getting into the Houstons of the world and the UConns of the world, who is ranked 5 right now, and they play a tough game against Illinois on Friday afternoon. So I think college basketball is in a really, really good spot right now. I think there's a ton of parity, and I think the way some teams have scheduled in this non-conference early season part of the year has been fantastic. It's given us some great games, and hopefully it carries over into the month of December and into conference play, because we could be setting up for a really, really special college basketball season with all these great teams that we have around the country right now.
Yeah, well, here's a good thing to talk about as we're looking at the rotation and where Duke makes it up right now with, again, the games that they've got coming up, Florida and a game against Michigan State next Saturday, true road game in that. The Blue Devils, 8-0 on the season, are now going for their 3rd win over an SEC opponent after defeating Arkansas and Texas. They've got another SEC win over Tennessee in the exhibition portion of the season. But it was noteworthy, they talked about this a little bit in the broadcast, the last 19 NCAA champions were undefeated on Thanksgiving at that point in the season, and Duke is able to hold on to that, still be a part of that conversation. That's enough of a data point at this point that's clearly something, right? And I'd much rather be a part of that picture than not, Kevin, when we're looking at the ultimate goal of this team. And then speaking to the depth and how it could shake up the next few games, could there possibly be a starting lineup tweak and whatnot? Duke is one of very, very few teams in the entire country that have 9 players averaging double-digit minutes, an opportunity that they've gotten so far this season. And look at tonight's game. Caden Boozer played just 8 minutes. Darren Harris played only 2. And those are 2 of your 9 guys that make up that number. In some ways, I hate to say it, but I wouldn't be surprised if over these next 2 games, we see that number shift back down a little bit more. And it's a little bit harder to hold on to the fact that you would have 9 guys averaging double-digit minutes, as awesome as that is.
Yeah, I mean, JJ, what it feels like in college basketball, your rotation eventually shrinks down because that's just what it does. I mean, we've seen that with Mike Krzyzewski over the past years and decades of basketball. We've seen that even with John Shire last year. You look at the NCAA tournament and how late in the regular season you saw Isaiah Evans, but you didn't really see him that much in the NCAA tournament. Same with Pat Ngongba. And even Caleb Foster to an extent, who came on strong late in the season. That's just what happens.
Not enough Mason Killis down the stretch, man. I mean,
yeah, like that's just what happens in this sport. So I agree with you on that. If guys aren't getting the time, I think that's certainly a reason. And when you look at this schedule, it's good team after good team. And then the other thing on being undefeated on Thanksgiving, it's certainly you would rather be in that boat than out of that boat. But the one thing I'll add to that is like I would love to see the data points of teams that those other undefeated teams have played, right? Are they playing mediocre schedules to that point
Right.
and racking up wins instead of going out, challenging themselves, seeing where their deficiencies lie, and then going from there and trying to correct those into December and January. So it's certainly better to be in that grouping than not in that grouping. But I think that should be just have a small, minute asterisk on it. But for Duke, you feel good about being in that grouping because you've beaten three what we think are really good teams. Now, I know Texas didn't have the greatest performance out in Maui. They did end up winning 2 games, I think, but lost to Arizona State. And how about Kansas? JJ, I think one thing Duke fans maybe not as talking as much about. I mean, Duke played Kansas without Darren Peterson, and we all said, well, what's that win going to really look like because Kansas's best player didn't play? Look what Kansas just did in the Players Era Festival. Now, I know they got 2 light games in their opening 2 against Notre Dame and against Syracuse. But the way they played in that second half against Tennessee the other day to win that game and to come in third place and have an undefeated week out in Las Vegas, I think that's an important, and I think it just adds to that Duke win over Kansas in Madison Square Garden.
Big time win for the Blue Devils at this point of the year. Happy to be 8-0 on the season, and we'll see if they can carry it in to their next couple of games here as they look to continue the winning ways. Shout out to Duke. Shout out to Cam Boozer once again. Shout out to you, Kevin Connelly, for joining me here tonight on Thanksgiving to break it all down. We didn't even have time to get into football. We know that it could be a super chaotic weekend in the life of the ACC, so we're going to be following along with that, with an exciting finale to the regular season for Duke against Wake Forest. And who is playing in Charlotte? I mean, so much can happen there. Tell us about all your work and how people can support you.
Yeah, you could come read all my thoughts on Duke basketball over at balldurham.com. You can come listen to my thoughts on Duke basketball and on Duke football over on the Believe in Duke Football podcast. JJ, I think when you look at like the NFL and when you have these playoff races coming down to the final week of the regular season, it's so exciting. That's kind of what we have this week in the ACC. So we're going to have a podcast out tomorrow morning talking about this Duke win over Arkansas and breaking down the scenarios and what we think Duke is going to do around ACC football. And I'll be honest, I pronounced this team dead after the last couple of games. So maybe they'll prove me wrong and win a game and get the right amount of luck on their side.
Great to see you, Kevin. Big win for Duke tonight, and we'll talk to you again soon, okay?
Thanks, JJ.
All right, that's Kevin Connelly joining us here on today's episode of Locked on Blue Devils. Again, happy Thanksgiving to all of our everydayers out there. Thank you guys so much for your support and everything that you do for us here on Locked on Blue Devils. Subscribe to our YouTube feed. Subscribe to us wherever it is that you get your podcasts. Tell your friends about us. And go check out everything else we got going on here at the Locked On Podcast Network. Go check out Locked On Sports today to get caught up on all the amazing things happening in the sports world here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. As always, go Duke. I'll talk to you again soon. My name is JJ Jackson. Thank you and good day.